Each day, defense forces from across the globe perform a variety of tasks aimed at ensuring the safety, security and stability of their respective homelands, as well as that of other countries that are affected by conflict. The South African National Defence Force is likewise duty-bound to provide combat-ready forces to defend and protect South Africa, its territorial integrity and its people. In the execution of this important task, the national and continental footprint of the SANDF is extensive. The mandate of the South African Department of Defence and Military Veterans, whose headquarters is situated in Pretoria, Gauteng, is to defend and protect the developmental state, support government initiatives and ensure that the SANDF, which constitutes the Armed Forces of South Africa, is able to contribute to the socio-economic development of the country. For the SANDF, this mandate translates into the following 3 military strategic objectives: to defend and protect South Africa, its sovereignty, its territorial integrity, its national interests and its people in accordance with the Constitution and principles of international law regulating the use of force. To contribute to freedom from fear and want, including the promotion of human security both nationally and internationally, and to contribute to a better life for all the people of South Africa. To achieve these important military strategic objectives, the South African National Defence Force undertakes various missions. These may include conventional, unconventional, health support and peace support operations, special operations, special force operations, defence diplomacy, support to other government departments, presidential tasks, disaster relief and humanitarian assistance. The SANDF is subdivided into 4 arms of service, namely the South African Army, the South African Air Force, the South African Navy, and the South African Military Health Service. To ensure that its policies, objectives and activities are in line with government objectives, the department works in close cooperation with government clusters, including the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security or JCPS cluster. This cluster promotes and coordinates the communication of all safety and security related programs derived from government's medium-term strategic framework or MTSF. In January 2010, government approved a concept document entitled Measurable Performance and Accountable Delivery. The purpose of this initiative was to develop the MTSF into outcomes with measurable outputs and optimal activities. An MTSF outcome for the JCPS cluster was subsequently identified, namely, all people in South Africa are and feel safe. It is within this outcome that the Defence Force focuses on the output related to border management. Prior to 1994, soldiers from the former South African Defence Force were deployed along the borders of South Africa on a 3-month rotation basis. In 1994, the newly elected democratic government ordered the phased withdrawal of the then newly formed SANDF from these borders. The function of borderline protection was subsequently taken over by the South African Police Service. In February 2010, however, government decided to authorize the return of SANDF soldiers to South Africa's borders with Mozambique and Zimbabwe in a phased approach. 2 years later, in 2012, another 4 military companies were deployed along the Zimbabwean, Swaziland and Lesotho borders. Since returning to the borders, the Defence Force has apprehended thousands of undocumented migrants and assisted the SAPS with the arrest of several criminals as well as with the recovery of numerous stolen goods and vehicles. Through these borderline protection duties, the SANDF supports the SAPS in addressing serious priority crimes such as farm attacks, drug trafficking, as well as ammunition and livestock theft. According to government estimates, stock theft alone is stripping the country's economy of about 450 million rand per year by hampering agricultural growth and robbing subsistence farmers of their livelihood. The Defence Force has also become involved in operations to combat rhino poaching in the Kruger National Park. Sadly, rhino poaching has now reached epidemic proportions in South Africa, where we are losing animals on an almost daily basis. Acclaimed rhino scientists believe that if poaching continues at its current rate, South Africa's rhino herd will go into population decline by mid-2012. Fortunately, thanks to the SANDF's anti-poaching operations in the Kruger National Park, rhino poaching has decreased significantly in this area. Several poachers, many of whom are undocumented migrants, have been captured through these operations, which typically involve various elements of the Defence Force, including helicopters from the South African Air Force and trackers from the Army's 44 Parachute Regiment. The Defence Force also renders support to SAPS in crime prevention operations across the country. This includes assisting the police with the setting up of roadblocks and vehicle control points, conducting crowd control during riots and strikes, and performing perimeter protection duties and house penetrations. SANDF soldiers also conduct foot patrols in certain areas and assist the SAPS with drug raids whenever required. The 2010 FIFA Soccer World Cup also afforded South Africa's armed forces the perfect opportunity to test the operational readiness of their capabilities, encompassing landward, airspace, maritime, and biological warfare. The SANDF ultimately played a decisive role in ensuring the success of this important international tournament. In addition to military matters, the SANDF also frequently capacitates other government departments upon request under certain circumstances in order to fulfill specific national obligations. In this regard, the South African Military Health Service, or SAMS, will render support to the Department of Health during hospital strikes by deploying health professionals to affected state hospitals across the country in multidisciplinary medical teams comprising doctors, nurses, and healthcare practitioners. SAMS also assists this department during events like natural disasters and the outbreak of infectious diseases. In times of disaster, soldiers from the SA Army will also assist communities in need by rendering crucial support services such as water provisioning, bridge building, and any other kind of support that may be required. As part of the Department of Defence's commitment towards contributing to a better life for all the people of South Africa, SANDF engineers occasionally also assist the Departments of Rural Development and Public Works by providing the necessary skills and labor for the construction of bridges in disadvantaged rural areas. The Defence Force furthermore assists the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries and the Department of Water and Environmental Affairs with tasks like mountain rescues, and also gives support to the National Sea Rescue Institute during sea rescue operations. The South African Air Force also renders invaluable assistance to these departments during large-scale firefighting operations. The South African Air Force also conducts search and rescue operations during floods like those experienced in the Northern Cape in 2011 and in Limpopo in 2012. The South African Air Force, in close cooperation with the Navy, also supports the Department of Water and Environmental Affairs and the SAPS by means of maritime and air borderline control operations to combat abalone poaching. These two arms of service of the SANDF also work together to respond to the negative effects adverse weather conditions such as cyclones may have on South Africa's coastal regions. An example of this support was in March 2012 when Cyclone Irina left behind a trail of destruction in the KwaZulu-Natal province. As one of the most southern parts of South Africa, Cape Town is the perfect base if one needs to undertake frequent expeditions to the Antarctic and surrounding areas. This is why the Department of Environmental Affairs uses Cape Town as home base for their weather expeditions to Marion and Gough Islands and the South African National Antarctic Expedition Base in Antarctica. Elements of the Air Force and Navy play a central role during these trips. Over the past few years, the role of the South African Navy has evolved from a largely peacetime routine to a predominantly operational profile. This is mainly due to two developments, one being domestic or internal, the other foreign or external. The domestic development has been the adoption of the back to the borders policy by government. Seeing that the country has both a terrestrial and a maritime frontier, this decision has affected mostly the Army and the Navy. South Africa's territorial waters, in which the country has full sovereign control, extend 12 nautical miles or just over 22.22 kilometers from its coastline. It also has an exclusive economic zone, which extends for 370.4 kilometers from the coastline. This has increased the number of patrols the Navy fleet has to conduct in South African territorial waters. The foreign or external development that has transformed the Navy's operational profile was the spread of piracy activities north of the Mozambique Channel. As a result, Mozambique requested naval and air support from South Africa to secure these waters. South Africa's frigates now maintain on a rotational basis a permanent presence in the northern Mozambique Channel. This deployment also involves the SAF, with a Lynx maritime helicopter detachment situated on the frigate and a shore-based C-47 TP maritime patrol aircraft and support detachment based in northern Mozambique. Contingents from the South African Special Forces and SAMs are also involved in this operation, as are members of the Mozambican Navy. This multinational patrolling operation in the Mozambique Channel has been a very successful deterrent, and there have been no further pirate attacks in this area. The Department of Defense and Military Veterans, under the auspices of the new Partnership for Africa's Development (NEPAD), also participates in various initiatives aimed at securing peace and stability on the African continent. In this regard, the SANDF is involved in numerous peace support operations and post-conflict reconstruction and development programs. It also provides advisory and training support to other African states. Current SANDF deployments in support of United Nations and African Union peace support operations are mainly in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Sudan. SANDF elements are also deployed in the Central African Republic as part of a bilateral arrangement. Apart from its peace mission deployment in the DRC, the SANDF also sent an election support deployment to this country to provide logistical support during its presidential elections in November 2011. The SAF deployed Oryx helicopters, C-47 TPs and C-130s to distribute the voting material to 210 delivery points across the country. This included the delivery and collection of election material and the ferrying of military support personnel to assist with its distribution at the 63,000 polling stations. The support rendered by the SANDF enabled the Congolese to hold free and fair elections. In August 2011, the SANDF distributed in excess of 600 tons of aid to thousands of refugee camps near Mogadishu in Somalia. This assistance formed part of a massive drive by Gift of the Givers to take much-needed food, water, cooking utensils, tents and medical supplies, all of which was collected by the foundation itself to these destitute refugees. None of these SANDF efforts would have been possible without skilled personnel. The SANDF is an all-volunteer force consisting of a regular core force and a reserve force component. The recruitment of young, fit soldiers is paramount in ensuring the successful functioning of any defense force. This is why the SANDF's Military Skills Development System, or MSDS initiative, remains a key MTSF priority for the Department of Defense and Military Veterans. Through this youth-focused program, the Defense Force annually recruits healthy young South Africans of all races for a period of 2 years of full-time military service. This is followed by a further period of voluntary service in the SANDF Reserve Force component. The MSDS not only provides the SANDF with the required military human resources, but also empowers the youth of the country through training and development opportunities. Through this initiative, the Department of Defense and Military Veterans continues to contribute towards job creation and the alleviation of unemployment in the country by providing career opportunities to these young South Africans. In addition, the MSDS ensures the rejuvenation of the SANDF by providing the Defense Force with scarce skills in a variety of professions. Over the past 18 years, the South African National Defence Force has contributed significantly toward creating stability, peace, security and prosperity on home soil as well as elsewhere on the continent. This extensive national and continental footprint of the SANDF bears testimony to the contribution made by its highly skilled men and women toward making the world a better place for all of us. It is what makes the South African National Defence Force the pride of the nation.